Guten Tag, mein Name ist Courtney, ich bin Studentin und ich studiere Französisch, Chinesisch und auch Deutsch. Heute habe ich für Sie ein paar Tipps über das Halten der Reden und Referaten auf Deutsch. Hello, my name is Courtney. I'm a college student and I study French, Chinese, and obviously German. Today I have some tips for you about giving speeches and presentations in German. My first tip for you regarding giving speeches in German is not to think of it as a foreign concept. Think of it the same way you would think of as an English speech, with, granted, some weird vocab and grammar. It's the same process. You have to have a well-organized speech with a clear message. You have to present it confidently by standing up straight, maintaining eye contact, not reading out of the paper without looking at your audience, because then they can't understand you. It's the same exact concept, so don't think of it as a terrifying new thing that you have to learn how to do. Now you might be thinking, okay, fine, I'll think of it as an English speech, but I still have to give it in German. So let's focus more on what might be tricky about giving a speech in a foreign language. You're not as well versed in this language, you don't have as much vocabulary or as much grammar. But that's fine. Use simple vocab, use simple grammar, use things that you know so that when you're standing in front of the audience, you can confidently talk about your subject without trying to remember, oh, that's a subordinating conjunction, the verb goes at the end, wait, what's the verb of this sentence? Just use simple vocab, use simple grammar. Your audience will thank you because they have to sit and listen to it, and it's pretty hard to listen to really complicated German, especially if they're at the same level as you. Another really important thing about talking in a foreign language is that you can't mumble, you can't whisper. You have to speak very clearly and slowly so that your audience can understand what you're saying, and you also need to focus on pronunciation. The easiest way to get better at pronouncing German words is just to practice. Read your texts out loud, study your vocab by orally saying each of the words, and when you have to write your speech, make sure you practice it over and over again out loud, hopefully in front of some of your fellow German students so that they can say, hey, you keep saying IE the way you should say EI, so on and so forth. The main point is to just speak very slowly so that your audience can understand you, and you can focus on making sure you're saying the words correctly. Besides speaking slowly and clearly, you also need to speak with purpose. This means that your speech has some kind of motivation behind it. You're trying to inform your audience about something, persuade them to think a certain way, any kind of purpose that you might have in giving the speech. And in order to get that purpose across, you have to have a well-organized speech. My tip for having a well-organized speech is to have a speaking outline with you when you present your speech. Obviously, you might not be allowed this, but making a speaking outline and using it when you practice will be extremely helpful. So here we have an example of a very simple speaking outline. Again, a speaking outline is to help you be more organized. It's not your speech written down on a piece of paper that you can read. It's just short keywords that help remind you, if you get lost while you're talking, what your next point is, what example you have for this point, so on and so forth. So let's say your main topic is eating breakfast, Frühstück, you'll have that. You'll have wichtig weil, important because. You'll have your two main points, geistige Fähigkeit, körperliche Fähigkeit, mental ability and physical ability. And then you'll have your two more specific points, maybe a personal example here, anything that you might be talking about. And you have those under this to signify that maybe you just finished introducing mental ability and you can't remember what your example was. Stacy, 2009. Oh yeah, I'm quoting a study about how 87% of people that ate breakfast tested better. Anything you might be talking about, have them briefly as 2 points. Briefly is the main idea. You don't want a super long paragraph because when you look down at your paper, you'll just get lost in all the words. So just very briefly, your main topic, your main points, your details within those points, and then maybe your conclusion. Eating breakfast kann Sie helfen, it can help you, and it's so einfach, it's so easy to do. My final tip is, of course, to practice. Everyone knows practice makes perfect. Maybe not completely perfect, but it will help you in many ways. Practicing over and over again will help you figure out different ways to say each of your sentences, so if you can't think of the exact grammar pattern you used, you can think of another one. It'll help you with circumlocution, which is just talking around a word. Maybe you can't remember the word for Frühstück, but you can remember it's the meal you eat in the morning. You can say that. Your audience will understand what you mean, and if they're at your same level, they'll understand why you couldn't remember that word. So practicing will give you a lot of good confidence. You'll feel more familiar with your subject so that when you do your presentation, you look like you know what you're talking about. And it's also just a good way to improve your German. The more you talk, the more you listen to yourself, the better you'll become. Here we have a summary of the 5 tips we've talked about today. Number 1, think of a German speech the same way you would think about an English speech and approach it in much the same way. Number 2, use grammar and vocabulary that you know. Don't be afraid to look up some words and some new grammar patterns, but stick to what you know you can remember. Number 3, speak slowly and clearly and emphasize correct pronunciation. This will help you improve your spoken German and will make it easier for the audience. Number 4 is to be well organized and have an outline to help you jog your memory if you happen to forget where you are in your speech. And number 5, the most important, practice, practice, practice. Not only will this make you better when you have to actually present this speech, but it will also just help you in learning German overall. Ich hoffe, dass meine Tipps hilfreich waren und ich wünsche Ihnen alle viel Glück. I hope my tips were helpful, and I wish you all good luck. Tschüss!